Welcome to Inside the Kingdom, your all-access pass into the colorful and creative world of comics. This podcast isn't just about interviews, it's a lively journey that we'll have through the halls of King Features, where the magic of characters like Popeye, Flash Gordon, Zitz, the Phantom, and even Beetle Moses are born. Join us for heartfelt, fun conversations with the brilliant minds that are crafting these stories. We're talking about the latest developments, the sparks of creativity, and the little-known stories behind your favorite comics. It's always friendly, insightful, and sometimes you'll get a surprising peek into the world of comic creation. Perfect for all you longtime fans and newcomers alike. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and get ready to meet the people who bring these beloved characters to life. Welcome to Inside the Kingdom. On this episode, we interview Randy Milholland and Emi Burge, the extraordinary duo behind Olive and Popeye. And we ask, just what is Olive and Popeye? So sit back, enjoy, and get ready for a ride.
You like to go by Emi, correct?
Correct.
Okay, perfect. Always like to make sure I get people's names.
Very appreciated.
Okay. And I guess let's get into it. This is super exciting. Popeye has been around for decades, like a century. I think is it 94 years now?
So Popeye, the character, first showed up in January of 29. The comic strip, Thimble Theater, as of tomorrow, will be its anniversary. It started in 1919.
Yes.
So it's December 19th, 1919 was the first Thimble Theater strip.
Amazing. So I'm joined by Randy Milholland and Emi Burge. Did I say this correctly?
Milholland, yeah.
Great. So we're excited. We're talking about the new Popeye strip you guys have been working on. It's really exciting to see this character come back for new audiences as well as fans of the original cartoon strip, the news cartoon and the animated cartoon. How did you guys, I guess, first get involved with Popeye? I know that both of you have loved it since childhood. I guess, when were you first introduced?
Randy, if you'd like to go first.
Oh, I mean, like my first introduction to Popeye was probably kindergarten. I grew up out between Dallas and Fort Worth, and one of our UHF affiliates, the KTRA 39, started running the King Features 1960 cartoon. And that was my first, exposure to the character. Then, of course, the Robin Williams movie came out not long after that. As for comics, the first exposure I ever had to the Popeye comic was coming across a collection of Bobby London's run called Mondo Popeye. He took over the daily strip from Bud Sagendorf. I'm sorry, I have a cat walking around right now on top of my papers.
They do that.
Yeah,
That's a lot. Mine.
Especially kittens. But Bobby London took over from Bud Sagendorf around, I think, 86. He just in 92. And there was a compilation called Mondo Popeye that I came across in a bookstore. And that was my first real exposure to Popeye as a comic strip character. From there, I found Seer strips in the library. I read those, and I was able to get a hold of various small digest compilations of the Bud Sagendorf strips. And my connection to the comic came in, I guess, 2018. A friend of mine, Rich Stevens, who does an online comic called Diesel Sweeties. I do an online comic called somethingpositive.net, and we've been friends for a long time. He said, hey, a friend of mine works for King Features, and they are looking for people to do strips for the anniversary. And he's like, you're kind of obsessed on this character, which is fair. I hate to say it, but and so I emailed, hi, Dynamite. Jesus.
Oh, cute name.
Yeah, it's as appropriate. He's an explosion. So T, I've never known how to pronounce her last name. I feel so bad. But I spoke to T, and we talked for a few hours in email about continuity and characters we loved. And so I got to do a strip for the 90th anniversary celebration they did. I instead did 7 because I couldn't narrow it down, and they told me just to choose one. And then later, I submitted a package because the daily strip hasn't been it's been in reruns since '92. So I submitted a package of strips because I was like, I'd like to take that over if no one's doing it. And during COVID, they asked permission to run my package of strips on the site, and it got a really good reaction. That was around the time they brought to me the idea doing the Olive and Popeye strip, that they were going to look for an artist who's either female or had like an experience of living like a feminine life. And they wanted me to do the Popeye side of it. So we split between, that person be doing the Olive side, I do the Popeye stuff. And then Hi Eisman decided who had been doing this Sunday comic since 94, in 2022 decided he wanted to retire. And so they contacted me and asked if I wanted to take it over. And I said yes. And then a few months later, they got hold of Shadia Amin, who did the first year of the Olive side of Olive and Popeye. And we worked together on that. And now I get to work with Emi. And annoy the hell out of them with stupid things on Discord. And
I think it's good.
if you want to know the history of this character, in 1952. Yeah.
No, it's great for me. My experience with Popeye started from a very young age. Where I live in Southern Oregon, I live in a very small town. And so the idea of being like an artist, like a commercial artist, was kind of just like, oh, whatever. But I grew up in an incredibly supportive family, including my grandpa, who's a watercolor painter. And I have very early memories of our summer beach trips where we'd go to the Oregon coast, and he would be drawing cartoon characters in the sand, including like Mickey Mouse and all this. And one I remember vividly is his drawings of Popeye. He would draw a lot of Popeye in the sand, and I would ask him questions. I learned just recently, after I took over Shadia's run, that Popeye was my grandpa and grandma's favorite comic character. In fact, they used to collect the comics. And so they were thrilled when they found out I was taking this over. I think the first time, aside from that, I would watch the cartoons when they would show up on like Boomerang and stuff when I was growing up. And I always really enjoyed them. Olive, like, I always felt they could do more with Olive, but I also knew that these cartoons were really, really old. And then, of course, I'd seen the comics a little bit at local newsstands. And then when I went to the Savannah College of Art and Design, we would have to do studies on older comics. And so I would read a ton of older comics, including Popeye. And then this last summer, I got contacted by one of my classmates, Shadia. And she said, "Hey, are you busy?" And I was like, "Well, not really." And she's, "How interested would you be in taking over Olive and Popeye?" And I'm like, very, very much so. And this comic is the first, I guess, syndicated / published comic that I've done since graduating from college. And it's been a blast. I'm learning so much from Randy and everyone else. And
oh no, I'm sorry.
You teach me a lot, even if you...
Oh no, it's all bad.
It's all good. But it's a lot of fun, and I'm loving it. I love working with the characters and being able to develop this storyline that's going on. Just taking what Shadia placed down before me and just running with it and having a blast. It's a dream come true for me. Just this, non-binary kid in Southern Oregon who didn't think they would ever do anything like this.
Well, that's huge. Congrats to both of you. I love that, like bringing something back, especially that meant a lot to your grandparents, and like something from your childhood, like coming back into the future in your career is really exciting. I guess, how do you put your inventive mark on this while respecting Popeye's true nature?
Do you want to go first today, or?
You're good start.
Oh, I mean, for me, like on the Popeye end, one of the things I wanted to do with Olive and Popeye is there are a lot of characters that are kind of forgotten. Seeger passed away in 1938, and immediately Doc Winter, who today would be his birthday, and a man took over the art, and a man named Tom Sims took over writing. They did it for a year. Bello Zaboli took over the art from, I want to say, late 39 until late 59. And Tom Sims wrote the daily and Sunday strip through 53. He did the Sunday strip until 59, and then a man named Ralph Stein took over the daily strips writing from like his first strip appears at 54 to 59. Then but Sagendorf takes over, and like that whole window between Seeger and Sagendorf tends to be forgotten. There's not really ever been reprints of any of it, and it's just kind of like out the window. And there's a lot of characters who vanished in that, and a lot of story progression. Like one of the things Zaboli and Sims did is they got into Popeye's childhood, who raised him, because it was established under Seeger. Popeye saw himself as an orphan. He didn't know where his dad was and things like that. And so they got to, okay, who raised him? Like, and they realized, Popeye retraced his birth and found out he was born in a seedy hotel, and Pappy abandoned his mother immediately. And so then they did a long multi-year storyline of Popeye trying to find his mom. And he actually found his mom's sister. Found out his mom's sister raised him for a few years with her husband, who happens to be Davy Jones, the spirit of the sea. And they got all this stuff. And like these characters are really important. And then when Sagendorf came in, understandably, because he had been Seeger's assistant and he had been working on the comic books for well over a decade, which had its own separate continuity. When he came to the comic strip, it's like, I'm going to do my stuff, which is understandable, but like meant a whole bunch of characters vanished. And I was always sad about, like, if you go through a lot of the Zaboli and Sim stuff, like they get into the emotional impact Popeye has of not knowing if his mom's okay. When he finally meets her, she doesn't recognize him, and how much that breaks his heart, because he just had hoped she would see him and go, oh, that's my kid. And it's like there were a lot of really important things where he played up to the fact that Popeye's biggest strength is he created a family when he needed one. And I liked that. And I think that was something that kind of went by the wayside over time. And I kind of wanted to bring that back and bring back supporting characters. And then you have characters like Sir Pomeroy. During the Ralph Stein run, Popeye's usual supporting characters kind of went to the background, and it was basically Popeye's adventures with this British explorer named Sir Pomeroy. And in this year's Olive Popeye, I brought Sir Pomeroy back. He has a bit of a fan base, which I didn't realize. Again, a character who hasn't been in reprints, and his last trip was in 1950. Well, that's not true. I say that Bobby London, I think, used him in a storyline in the late 80s, but like very brief cameo. So I just wanted to, to me, it was important to kind of go in and touch on like these aspects of the character. Like, yeah, family was always important to him. That was established under Seeger, and that was established under Sims Zaboli. And I think that is a thing that as I get older and I become a parent, that means a lot to me too.
As for me, I have always wanted Olive to be more than just the over-emotional woman character. Being the only girl in my family, or the only feminine presenting individual, I felt kind of upset that there wasn't a character that I could identify with directly in the Popeye universe. I'm tired of the damsel in distress role. Mm-hmm. And so when I was getting caught up on Olive and Popeye, I loved what Shadia and Randy were doing with Olive, where she had her own strength, because she always did in the older comics. She did. But it always fell to the wayside. And so being able to focus on that is incredibly important to me, especially in the world we live in now, where it feels like feminine strength is constantly being pushed down. I want to provide a role model in that regard with Olive and all of her friends and the adventures that they get up to. And yes, she still loves Popeye, and she still, is overjoyed when they reunite, but she can go and do her own thing and have her own adventures and be perfectly fine with that. It doesn't discount anything that's established. Something else that I'm wanting to bring in is a bit more of modern experiences for the younger generation. In the storyline that I'm working on right now, I have some plans for the future, for future characters that the younger generation can relate to, or people my age can relate to in a way that I feel is going to be really fun. I also love bringing in a sense of mystery and reading everyone's comments in the series about where they think the storyline is going with the boatsmen. And it's just a lot of fun. And I want to bring that kind of engagement to the readership so they can theorize together and think about, okay, where is this going? What should they do next? And I think that's a lot of fun.
I'm really glad that you and Shadia both agreed with me on that, because that was, like you said, if you look at the early comics, it isn't up until like the comics became influenced by the cartoons that Olive became a damsel in distress.
Just a screaming, emotional woman.
Well, there was a storyline called The Seven Sons of Sea Hag, where you find out Sea Hag has 7 identical sons that she raised on spinach, and she sends them to kill Popeye. They almost do, and he's so exhausted. At the end, Sea Hag says, I'll just finish him off, goes to stab him, and Olive Oyl literally parachutes in and beats the crap out of Sea Hag, because that's her boyfriend.
Yeah.
A lot of times where she has saved him or saved other people. And she was the muscle for the comic for 10 years before he showed up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. That's a rage point for me too. Like she could be angry. She can be petty, but we don't need a child.
No, absolutely. Just this screaming, crying, wailing figure. We don't need that. Like, she can have emotions. She is a person. She's going to have these extreme emotions, but she can still do her own thing and just be as strong as ever without having to rely on somebody else.
I think that's also because one thing that worked in the Seeger and the Simpsons of Bully era was, yes, they had her sometimes be kind of childish and petty, but they would also have Popeye be just as childish and petty.
Yeah.
Like, there's a Sunday strip, where it's them having an argument on a bench, and you realize they're both being just as, like, to the point Wimpy is like, you're both driving me nuts. Wrong. And I think at a certain point in time, it tips to, oh, well, you know, that's Olive Oyl, and Popeye just kind of tolerates it. It's like, no.
Yeah.
He adores her.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just as dangerous as the other one.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, like, who do you think would enjoy this strip? Because I feel like grandparents, parents, and kids can enjoy it together. And some of the points that you just brought up, I think, are what stood out to me and what made me interested in reading this is that, like you said, like, Olive is not a damsel in distress. Like, she has her own adventures, and I'm laughing at, like, with her just as much as I am with Popeye. Like, she's ready to scrap. She's ready to fight for him, like, just as much. And then she's also, like, a strong character, like the way she handles herself with like other males, and, like, even, like, with her friends, like, she's like her own character. And I love that. I think you guys did a really good job with that.
Well, that's all Shadia and Emi.
Shadia set a very, very nice foundation for me.
Yeah. And have you faced any challenges taking on, like, such an iconic IP? Have you gotten any like negative critiques or anything that kind of, I guess, helped you, like, develop, like, things a little differently, or any challenges in that sense?
When it comes to me, I guess I just haven't been at it so long. I was expecting a bit of pushback, especially taking Oliver Shadia's position. I was expecting a little bit of pushback, but I've had nothing but positive feedback from regular readers. And then, of course, my grandparents read it every time it comes out. And they are like, yeah, it's just Olive and Popeye for the modern age. And we love it. We think it's fantastic. And I'm like, that's great. I love that. So I personally haven't, and I was fully expecting it with the state of, like, the internet and how people can be
Twitter trolls.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had a different experience. So when I first took over, I did an interview with a local newspaper. in San Antonio, and the reporter was delightful. But I don't think most people understand that for newspapers, the writer doesn't write the headline, an editor does. And so I guess some editor, and he asked me things. I talked about how, in some ways Popeye was a very progressive comic under Seeger, and how Popeye, more than once identified as a woman, or he calls himself amphibious. He's both man and woman. Mm-hmm. And I talked about that. And whoever chose the headline for the online version of the articles basically wrote, Popeye Joe's woke. And,
oh, God.
And immediately, it was just, there is a late night talk show on Fox where they had a tantrum about me. I refused to watch it. I was like, nah, I'm good. I don't need to see this. And Breitbart ran an article that was kind of milquetoasty, but was obviously meant to let's get the comment section angry. And so I spent about a year getting just exciting hate mail. Oh. And then when I brought in, there's a character that was mentioned but never shown previously, named Whaler Joe. There was a series of written articles in 1931, I believe. And they're supposed to be the life of Popeye. It was done an interview with Popeye. Mm-hmm. And Seeger was involved in this. And he talked about, in the interview, Popeye mentions that he was raised as a child up until a certain age, until he reached adulthood, by another sailor named Whaler Joe. And Whaler Joe had never been shown in any comic. So I was like, I'm going to bring Whaler Joe in. And I did 10 or 15 designs, and I found the design I liked. And I decided to kind of go across race lines too. And I just happened to make him African-American. And you can imagine how that crowd reacted. It was great. Mm-hmm. Now, that being said, people who who just read the comic in general, because a lot of it was people who, I'm mad, I'm going to pretend I read the comic, and I will almost immediately show you I've never read the comic in my life, because they reference the cartoons, which are very different animals. Mm-hmm. There's no love triangle between Olive and Bluto in Popeye in the comic strip. That's just everything. People who had been fans of the comic for a long time, the response was, oh, wow, Whaler Joe is actually in the comic now. Or, oh, my God, Popeye's mom is back, and we have a first name for her. It's that. So people who enjoy the comic historically, either the response is, this isn't my kind of humor. Cool. Have fun. Fine. That's valid. I've done the same thing. Or they're just excited to see, oh, you actually like this comic, and you care about the history, and you're trying to revive things that are forgotten. So it's been a mix. Most of the hate has toned down. Most, not all. Every once in a while, I'll get some angry person, all caps, and their avatar is blatantly, it's them in the mirror shade wraparounds. Oh, yeah. It's, of course. But for the most part, the people who kept reading it have enjoyed it. And that's what I care about. I want Popeye to find new audiences. I want the whole cast to reach across age groups. I think there are a lot of younger people who think of Popeye. They think of a strip aimed at people in their 50s and 60s. And I want it to be something anyone can enjoy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you exploring his family is another thing that really stood out to me, because I'm not as well versed, clearly. But growing up as a kid watching the cartoon, I just really remembered Spinach and being strong and him saving Olive. So reading this, I think this is a great way to get people back into Popeye and learn more about the character, because there's so much more to him. I loved reading about Joe, and I was like, oh crap, this is the guy who raised him. And then the funny dynamic with Pappy and his mom, where Pappy's always jealous and always but it's you weren't really there.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he wasn't. I mean, Pappy vanished when he abandoned them in a hotel when I think Popeye was less than a year old, and Popeye had no memory of him. Yeah, and it's just I've had some people get upset about that portrayal. I've had some people say there's a person who I know said that the problem with how I write Pappy is Pappy has always been written as kind of a man-child who does whatever and doesn't think about other people. Mm-hmm. I'm just one of the few people who said, all right, let's see how this affects the people around you. Because man-children are fun to read about, but they're not fun to deal with.
No.
And I think most people across gender lines have had that one person in life, like, you won't grow up, and you won't take responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and Popeye loves his dad. Like, he's always going to love him, but he has another dad who was there, who is just as important. But yeah, it's pretty much everyone thinks of Popeye like, oh, spinach. And spinach is part of it. Like, it is part of the comic.
No.
But
was Joe's daughter? Oh, sorry. Was Joe's daughter an original character?
She was created by Shadia. Petunia was a character that did not exist, and when we were discussing it, I have my history of what I think happened with Popeye and Joe, like when Popeye left. It does alter some of the Seeger stuff, although I will say the article that was written about Lifetimes of Popeye was it's told from Popeye's viewpoint, and Popeye is an unreliable narrator because in it he says both his parents were dead, which, there. But they're obviously not. But we were discussing, Shadia asked how I felt about Joe having a daughter. And I said, honestly, I could see around the time Popeye is about to go out on his own, Joe starting his own family finally, because Popeye's going to leave and maybe he met someone and had a daughter. And so we hammered out the details that, yes, Popeye has a half-sister that he never really held up interaction with because he was off on his own at that point.
Because even their own, little dynamic, their little arc of him, picking her, on journeys and stuff. I love that. I'm I want to see more of that explored. That's a lot of fun in itself.
I mean, that's the thing. Again, the Seer, especially the Simmons and Bully stuff, Popeye craved having a family. He wanted to know where he came from. And whenever he found out, when he learned, his aunt, Auntie Jones, and Davy Jones were the ones that raised him until he wandered off when he's a baby, he was just so ecstatic. And he actually got Auntie Jones to come live with him for a few years. And that's important. I think that's that part of the comic that I always enjoyed a lot. And I imagine Popeye finding out oh, my little half sister's all grown up. Oh, he wants to be a sibling. And so of course he's going to do whatever, even if it's really dumb things he probably shouldn't be doing. They're going to get him really hurt. Well, it's from a baby sister.
Were there other new characters or other characters that were brought back? I know we haven't seen Olive's sister-in-law in nearly a century. What other characters were new or I guess brought back?
Cylinda Oil actually had last appeared half a year, I think, before Popeye showed up in the comic. And actually, that storyline was her and Castor separating. They were going to give up their marriage. And Shawnee and I had talked about it. What we decided was they did separate for a while, then they reunited at a certain point. And that's when they had Diesel. Diesel is a character who actually had never appeared in the comics, but she had appeared in the 1960 cartoons. And I was like, I want to port that character in. And since Olive only has Castor as a sibling, that has to be his daughter. May, who is one of Olive's friends, Shadia brought her in. She's an interpretation of a character who was based off of Mae West from the Fleischer cartoons. And we decided that instead of being her version of Bluto, they have a friendly rivalry. It's I want you to be better, but I don't want you to be better than me situation. And that was all Shadia's creation. Yeah. And I know that Emi has a new character that is coming up pretty soon. And I don't know if you want to talk about that character or not. I don't know when this goes up, so that's...
Yeah. There is a character coming up soon. I wanted to bring in a younger individual, but not as young as Diesel. So there's going to be a teenage girl. Her full name is Helen, but she likes to refer to herself as Hel, Hel, based on the Norse goddess. She's a lot of fun. Just the stereotypical teenage girl, thinks she's better than everybody, lots of self-esteem issues. She's going to butt heads with Olive quite a bit in the coming arc. But I think overall it's going to be really heartwarming, and they're going to form kind of a hesitant friendship over time.
The other character I brought in during my package and I kept around was Sea Hag's intern, who is a non-binary individual named Lyndon. And yeah, who is just literally the 20-something long-suffering, I'm doing this because it's the only internship that pays me. Shadia, when Shadia was doing Olive and Popeye, had asked about Bobby London had given Olive a cousin named Suture Oil, who was very shapely and had a big crush on Popeye. At one point did get married, and her husband took her last name, Motor Oil. And eventually, like, I brought Suture back because it's a character from when I started reading Popeye. And Shadia had asked about those two maybe dating. And so we came up with a reason what happened to Motor Oil. So yeah, we have like our first queer couple in the comics history. Which was fun because in the Sunday comic, I got to have Brutus develop a friendship with Lyndon and actually did ask them out on a date. And she got to explain to him, I don't date men. I'm very sorry. And he's like, oh, that makes things a lot easier. Actually, free. And so now it's a best friend.
I guess anything on how you guys wanted to handle like foes like Bluto?
I mean, Bluto was never really in the comic. That's the thing people understand. Like, he appeared in a single storyline under Seeger in 1932. That was it. And Olive Oil wasn't even present in that storyline.
Oh.
So, and he was a minor villain. He was billed as like the toughest man Popeye had ever faced. And like in the storyline, they fought nonstop for 24 hours, but Popeye still won. And Seeger never released him again, except for drawing promotional art for the cartoons when Fleischer started doing those. Winner in Sims never used him. Sims Zaboli never used him. Around 57, Stein brought him back into the strip for a few. Again, though, Olive was never in the storyline. He did give Bluto a twin brother named Burlo, who was clean shaven. He appeared in the last storyline that Stein ever wrote. And then there were questions about who owned Bluto at that point, and I believe Paramount felt that they owned him, so that's when he got phased out of the comics and was replaced with first with a character named Sonny, who was the son of Sea Hag, and then he got replaced with Brutus, who appeared in the 1960 cartoon as well. And so I brought back Bluto into the comic strip because my predecessor, High Eisman, had used him in 2 strips and had blatantly said, this is Brutus's brother. And so I got to do, King Features gave me permission, was to do a family hierarchy. Because Brutus had a mom who had appeared in some of the strips as well. So, okay, here's a family. We know Burlo exists. We know that that's Bluto's twin brother. Where does Brutus fall in this? Okay, I'll make Brutus the baby brother. He's cut. Because the way he was written by a lot of people, he was kind of insecure and unsure, and blatantly a follower. And I gave them an older brother named Bruto, who was based off of a typo done in British comics for Popeye, where they sometimes call him Brutus, sometimes call him Bluto, and sometimes call him Bruto. And so I made the older brother who's appeared in a strip, who's just long-suffering, tired, and just does not fight people. And it's been fun. Like, I had separate personalities. Bluto still does, like he does in the cartoons, hate Popeye. I did not port over the whole he wants to be with Olive Oil, though. I just, in my version of strip, he never did. And London used him in, I think, a 1991 storyline. And Olive was in that storyline, but Bluto he had no interest in her romantically. So I've kept with that. It's more of I just hate Popeye, and I just want to hit him. And Popeye hates me, and he wants to hit me, and that's our relationship. It's like almost a weird friendship in a way, because like that's the one thing that we're saying. And Brutus is kind of toned down a bit, where he's just wanting a little more acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
And Sea Hag is just a nightmare to deal with for everybody. Just a very fun, old, crotchety lady who's very aware of what's going on, very aware that she is a nuisance. Getting to do more magic with her, bringing her... She had a sister under Seeger's run. I got to bring her sister back. I've tried to bring back, in fact, the one that Shadia used, one villain I brought back, Susie the Sea Nymph. who in the Spinach Spring storyline, it was shown that she was just as strong as Popeye, but he couldn't fight her because even though she's a sea-nymph, she's a woman. So I get to bring her back. And Shawty used her a few times.
Oh yeah.
It's just she's a fun, weird character to write. There's a lot of fun villains. And actually right now I'm using General Bunzo, who was a Popeye villain from 31. And although he's now CEO Bunzo. So yeah, I'm trying to go back and find the really fun villains to bring back. I don't know what villains Emi's planning on using.
Yeah. Not sure yet.
I mean, there's so many.
There's so many.
Amy, you could always use Susie. She's
sure
really fun to draw too, just like a living ocean wave.
Yeah.
So,
and I guess in terms of like kind of like material, what do you draw inspiration from? Because like you've had things like yoga, and like random like things like that. I guess how do you kind of use like influence from daily life as well?
I know for me, a lot of the backgrounds and stuff are actually based on the areas I grew up. So those who are local to where I live, if they look at certain comic strips that I've done, they'll recognize buildings, or they'll recognize images, or they'll recognize a coffee cup that one of the characters are holding. I like pulling in lived experience because I feel like that's the best form of writing and storytelling, is to write what you know. And so that's where I draw a lot of my inspiration, is the things around me.
That was similar. Like for the Sunday strips, more so. Like I'll do things based on like my kid doing weird things with Sweet Pea. I also like to reread the old storylines a lot and just kind of take notes of what would happen with this. How's this never been revisited? I don't bring in as much personal stuff. I did do a storyline or Sunday strip where they went to a wrestling show, and I stocked it with independent wrestlers I actually know personally that were friends of mine. So I got to put a wrestler named Sue Young in it, and I've actually put another one of her wrestling personas in as Olive's boss at her day job, Susan, with permission from her. And I got to put in Barrington Hughes and a wrestler named Machko, who was a person I've known for a while, Livy Loca. Just, you know, if you're going to do a comic about wrestling and you have friends of wrestlers, you should, you know, give them a little bit of
That's pretty funny.
But, you know, a lot of it is just because I love the stuff and I'm like, here, I want to see more adventure stuff. What I like to have done. And folklore, like what weird monsters, because
yes, that's the fun stuff, is looking into like mythology and folklore and seeing how you can end that into it.
Oh, it's so much fun. Also, what monsters are just fun to draw, because sometimes you just don't want to do a strip that's full of monsters and draw the weird. One of my favorite Sunday strips involved the Minotaur, and it is the Minotaur, you know. He sees a silhouette, he sees his Popeye, he's challenging Popeye. It turns out it's Wimpy, and Wimpy eats him. And I'm shocked they let that run, because the last panel is Wimpy walking up behind the rest, and he's got a wagon full of hamburgers, and he is wearing like the pelt of the Minotaur again. And I was like, they're like, is this okay? And that's fine. I'm like, okay.
All right.
Wimpy is allowed to eat sentient half people.
No.
I guess that's all.
I was going to say, I guess a little more like digging into the art a little bit more. Can you kind of describe like your drawing routine and like your process? Do you come up with like the full panel idea first before you start drawing, or?
For me, I start with what's called thumbnails. They're really, really quick, small sketches of what the overall page is going to look like. That way I know the panel layout and where the characters are going to be. And then that'll change quite a bit by the time I get to the end process. So it's just pretty much scribbling something down and then refining, moving things around, refining until it's done. That's the workflow I find the easiest for me. Occasionally, if there's something very, very dialogue heavy, I'll sit down and I'll script out exactly what I want. But usually I do art focus first and then dialogue.
I tend to write my dialogue first so I can start killing my darlings and, condense it more. Mm-hmm. I draw on a Surface Pro. So for the Olive Popeye strips, I have a general loose framework. I'll pencil the strip out. Like I'll plug all the dialogue in, and I'll loosely pencil, then I'll go refine, and then I will ink it as best I can. And if I want to do like fancier color, that'll be the last thing, like shading or light effects. Right. Same on the Sunday strip. If there's a character who's new to me, or like there's a monster I want to design, I might spend like a day or so, like a few hours a day, like beforehand, drawing them over and over to get them to a point where they look like they're fun, and B, I can draw them fast.
Yes.
Because it's cool. Like I have had some strips that were definitely like at deadline or past deadline. It's like, well, they're really pretty. Would have been nice to have had this on time though.
Yeah.
And that's the thing I'm trying to be better at. I'm bad at it. I'm real bad at it. But so yeah, it's just a lot of like refining that process. Especially again with this new character, or if it's an interpretation of an existing character, what these, sketching them over and over so that you don't lose who that character was, but they fit more in a modern context. Because if I bring in Sea Hag's niece, who last appeared in 1959, well, she had 1959 clothing sensibilities and how she was dressed, and maybe I want to update that.
Yeah.
And do you kind of, like storyboard your ideas? Because the comic strip isn't necessarily consecutive, but I did find like some pieces like referred to something that previously happened. So do you ever kind of go back and like change in order you want to release something, or you just kind of go with the flow of what comes to your mind?
For me or for Emi?
Both of you.
I keep like a list of things I want to reference. So like if I think something needs to come up later, like one strip I did on a Sunday strip was Sea Hag is talking to her intern Lyndon about how Lyndon asked, "Did any of your children ever become a witch like you?" And Sea Hag says, "Well, I had a son become a warlock, but it was a horrible incident." And you find like for a moment like Ellen is worried that the Bernard, Sea Hag's pet vulture, might be like the son who got transformed. And Sea Hag's like, "I wouldn't keep my son as a pet. What's wrong with you?" And you find out it's actually the perch that Bernard sits on as her son.
Oh no.
And it was a dumb joke, but I was like, I'm going to reference that again later. Mm-hmm. I know because I had a storyline coming up. I wanted to do a Halloween storyline, like on Sunday strips, focusing on Sea Hag. According to Sagendorf, there were no witches left. Sea Hag was the last living witch, and I undid that. Like, I find out that the witches are actually trapped somewhere, and they're actually avoiding Sea Hag. But like, I was like, I'm going to bring that one dumb throwaway joke back, and I brought it back. Like, and I had the perch talk again because I wanted to see who remembered it, and a lot of people actually remembered it. Like, oh, so that's still going. That's going to keep going now. And I will do annotations because there's certain things I want to reference, like under previous creators, especially if it's a seer. I will reference it, and I'll put like a comic book style annotation of this happened on this date.
Yeah.
Well, maybe they don't care, but I want people to show like this actually has a continuity to it. I don't know if that answers your question. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
As for me, I have a list of where I want the story to go. I have like a beginning, middle, and end, and I give myself some wiggle room in the middle if I feel like I need to elaborate on something. I know one of the strips that came out a few weeks ago, some of the readers thought that maybe Celinda can see ghosts too, and that's not what I was trying to get at. With it, Celinda is a mom of a toddler. So when it comes to making sure that someone takes a nap, she's very, very good at it, and she will scare off anything that tries to wake this person up. And so a recent strip that I did, I elaborated on that a little bit more and kind of hit home that no, she didn't happen to see the ghost that Olive was being disturbed by. It's just, mama bear senses kicking in. And so having that wiggle room between the beginning, middle, and end that I'm wanting to do is really nice. It allows me to flesh out the character interactions a bit more while I still go in the direction that I'm wanting to go.
Yeah, I definitely know where my end of the Popeye stuff is going to end story-wise. I know how I want it to go. I'm just trying to keep it as loose as possible because I want the storyline. I miss Popeye having storylines ongoing, but I also want there to be a lot of punchlines too. I want each strip to stand on its own as a funny. And by the way, as the parent who stayed at home with a small child, because I was the stay-home parent, yes, you can also toddlers can see ghosts, and I I got some stories on that one. I don't know. But it's definitely like you will ward off anything that might wake that child up, and it would work well with a lot of adult friends who can't sleep, I'm pretty sure.
Oh yeah.
Since you brought up that Pluto was with under Paramount, I believe you said.
What happened was Pluto first appears in Thimble Theater in 1932 in a storyline by Seeger. A year later, the very first Popeye cartoon happens, and they brought Bluto into that was under Fleischer Studios, which would eventually get absorbed and become Famous Studios under Paramount. So Paramount had a license for a very long time, and I believe, it's never explained to me like key features. So this could be talking on my ass, and I apologize. From what I understand, Paramount thought that they had owned or created a character. And King Features decided in the 50s, say, we're not going to fight with this. We'll just make a new character. And eventually that got rectified decades later. But it took a long time for him to come back.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, like, in terms of, like, I guess, like, licensing or using any character, like, were there any characters you had to kind of get approval for?
So I like to do cameos in the Sunday strip. Actually, I've done cameos in the Olive and Popeye strips, too, of other King Features characters. There's a character I have put in both, who's a little baby in a giant bonnet named Bunky. And Bunky was from a topper strip, which were back in the day, up until like the 40s, comic strips would be sold with a topper strip, which is like basically a sister strip. Like, hey, you really want Popeye, but you're also getting Sappo, which was Popeye's topper strip. And Bunky was the topper strip for Barney Google and Stumpy Smith. And so I brought him in. There's a character named Little Iodine, who I've shown to be Diesel's best friend. Little Iodine used to have her own comic strip under King Features. So she was around from, I want to say, the 40s until the mid 80s. And actually, my predecessor, Popeye, Pi Eisman, was, I believe, the last artist to work on her strip as well. I've brought in Cats and Jammer Kids. I've actually brought them into Popeye before because I wanted to do something with it. I have to ask permission, though, because there's some characters where it's like Cats and Jammer Kids, Crazy Cat, things like that. Those are owned wholly by Hearst and King Features. But every once in a while, like, hey, well, this one character, and they'll say, well, we actually don't own that character, or we co-own it with an estate. So we have to get permission. And that's when I drop it. Because it's never so important to me that I want to have a lawyer go talk to an estate about, like, well, your great grandpa's comic strip character who last appeared in a comic in 1937, how would you feel? Like, it was going to be a throwaway gag in one panel that 5 people would get. No. So but King Features for me has been very kind on that. Like, I did a strip where the joke is about, it's actually a strip that I did on the birthday of the strip for a Little Iodine. It's her birthday party at like a Chuck E. Cheese knockoff. And she's warning the other kids not to get in the ball pit because there's ball pit goblins. And there was a little boy got stolen. And I drew the 2 characters from Cats and Jammer Kids and a third child, because in the original Cats and Jammer Kids, there were 3 boys instead of 2. And King Features was very fine. Like, that's fine. Okay. Which was like, really? Okay. I'm okay pushing that button. See how Also, because I'm not like making any of these characters look bad, I think helps. But I always ask permission before I put the character in the strip, because I don't want to get to them and they're like, actually, you have to fix that panel, remove them.
Right.
You haven't done any cameos yet, have you?
The cameos have done a really subtle. There's a really subtle Casper the Friendly Ghost cameo.
That's funny because the island that they're on, because I had to do the in between you and Shadia, was named for the creator of Casper. Like ghosts.
My cat, not the one that lives with me currently, but my other one, is named Casper. And so I was like, I'm working with ghosts. I'm going to put in a subtle Casper reference. So there's a toddler baby ghost that Olive encounters, and it's literally just Casper with hair. That's it.
I mean, that's enough of a change to keep you safe from the harm.
Exactly.
That's what matters.
It's also like, it'll be there for people who really know what they're looking for.
And you can always connect it because Harvey Comics did at one point have the Popeye license for comic books in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
I hate that I know this garbage, but I do.
Fun little Easter egg
in my brain.
Exactly.
And before we wrap, I guess any other fun, cool stuff we can look forward to that you can talk about?
That last part really kind of dings it.
Yes, it doesn't have to be Popeye either.
Oh, Emi, you go.
I'm very excited for where the Olive storyline is going, and I hope everyone else will be as excited as it goes forward. 'Cause there's a lot of cool things coming to explain a lot of the ghost stuff going on.
I will say, for me, as like, again, a longtime reader of Popeye, getting to work with Shadia and Emi, it's very exciting to see new Popeye adventures that I don't write and I get to enjoy, because it's been about a decade since there were any new like adventure comics, and those are from EW. So I'm very excited to see how that story goes and addresses. I'm also really glad Popeye's not in it, because canonically he's scared of ghosts. But I'm just excited about getting to try to bring these characters back, put them in a modern reality, but also the same, like, let's have adventure, let's have there be some danger to it. And hopefully we'll get to do a third year of it.
Hope so. I don't know if Alex came back yet, but
I think he said you were in charge.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure we don't lose the recording.
Oh, that would be, yeah.
Yeah.
Can you stop the recording on your end?
I think we hit an hour. I don't want to take too much of your day.
I'm fine. For the first time in a while, I have the house to myself. There's no child screaming at me.
Oh, some quiet.
For a few more days.
Yeah.
By tonight, I'll be crying about it. My baby's not home. I clean up after. Oh no, I can use the bathroom and close the door.
How old is your kid?
She's 5. She'll be 6 in a couple weeks. She is autistic, so she has a verbal delay, but she's getting to where she can talk a lot better. And she's definitely getting sarcasm down. And when I work on the comic, she'll sit next to me and do her drawings as well.
Oh, I love that.
She's drawing a lot of cats and a lot of owls lately, and she gives them unicorn horns.
Amazing.
She's definitely doing her own little story. She'll explain to you, like, this cat's heart is broken because the owl doesn't want him. And it's like, oh no. Or this owl is going to eat this kitten because the kitten was rude. I was like, wow, that's some grim level, kid. Okay.
That'll be funny if she becomes a comic artist.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not wishing that on my baby. Like, she already got her neurodivergence from daddy. She doesn't need that too.
Aww.
But yeah, if she wants to, I'll promote it. If she wants to, like, I just want her to be happy. That's all I care about right now. And also to let me clean the house without her intentionally knocking everything behind me down.
Aww.
That's not
like
happen.
a cat adventure.
Very much like a cat.
Children and cats are cats are furry toddlers.
They are. They're
really just furry toddlers.
I love that.
Thanks for joining us on Inside the Kingdom. A big thank you to Nadia Martinez, Randy Milholland, and Emi Burge for their wonderful contributions to our show today. Remember to visit comicskingdom.com to enjoy Olive and Popeye comics every Tuesday and Thursday. Keep exploring with us and tune in next time for more stories from Inside the Kingdom.